So, welcome Sowdhamini. And firstly, let me congratulate you. You've just completed 25 years at NCBS. Yeah, that's wonderful actually. So, Sowdhamini, as you know, you've given a lot of interviews, been part of so many conversations. I think this one is set apart because of our focus on gender.
Yeah.
Also from a feminist perspective, to explain how we use gender as a lens, patriarchy as a concept, to examine, say, the institution of science, to see how it is coming out of women's struggles for their rights, how it influences the way we do our work, the way we produce our knowledge.
Yeah. So for us, when we do research, when we talk about and think about research, we've always been trained to think of it as pure as possible.
Yes.
The purest form.
Yes.
And there, for us, it is like, when you go to a music concert, your mind is tuned to music. When you go to a temple, you think about all the spiritual things like that. When you do research, you think we are trained to think only about research. So I feel that when we discuss with our students or colleagues, or for us, gender does not play any role. So it is like we only think about the person's work and not even about the person. So doing science, it seems it doesn't even matter whether we are a man or a woman, whether we are guiding a girl student or a boy student. It definitely does not matter. But when it comes to allied matters, there is a difference, because when it comes to, guiding a girl student who happens to be a mother, we are sensitive to the fact that she has to go home in time to look after other things, because when people management come, I think such points become very pertinent, whether we are dealing with women or not. And that's where I think really we start to sensitize ourselves about whom we are talking to. Not because we want to distinguish, but just so that we are more accommodative and supportive of the individual's needs.
And sensitive to differences.
Differences
is very crucial.
Absolutely. I think biologically also it is undeniable that people are different and their responsibilities grow different. So it is the local environment and the supportive state of people, by which we are able to give them the chance and support them to do their best.
The common sense understanding and the public understanding of science is that it is value neutral. It is gender neutral. And yet what we see is, empirically what we see is that the prevalence of something called a glass ceiling for women who actually make it into science, low representation of women in science across fields. You see also things like the leaky pipeline. Often we tend to think of this as caused by things outside of the scientific institution. But our question is to be able to also see where science is actually also responsible for it. What do you think about this?
I think when it comes to taking higher responsibilities, definitely there is differentiation. Maybe because, when it comes to women, people feel that they should not be given too much of administrative responsibility because they have to go home attend to matters, and that could be one reason. It's not as a form of distinguishing, but just to be beneficiary to their own other commitments. That's where I think the differences start to come. I think when people do school, they are never thought whether it's so much whether they are as a girl or a boy, and even in college it does not seem to matter. And even until PhD, I think people are doing well. We have more women PhD students in some places than men PhD students in all areas.
If you look at the statistics, actually, it's basic sciences, undergraduate level, postgraduate level, PhD level. There are almost about 30 to 35% women. And yet, this is considered to be a good statistic. And yet you don't see women in very high
that positions. Is where I think that problem also comes, because when it comes to biological research, I would say sometimes in some departments the number of women are even more. And then when the people have to take joint responsibilities, that is doing higher research or getting into academia as an independent investigator, and plus also maybe get into marriage, get into motherhood. That's when I think they have to take some decisions. And for which I can remember that Professor Balram, who was my PhD mentor, had written an article in Current Science about women in science, and he had observed and mentioned that either women who go to higher places, I mean, who take independent investigator positions and become professors or so, they either remain single or they it so happens that they marry someone who is in the same area, within the same discipline, so that there will be higher understanding and support. This is true, but I think the family also is cooperating in it. They also play a role, because it's not only the spouse, but also we become part of another family. So I think the other family also needs to be understanding and encouraging and supportive.
But this problem, for example, the men in science don't face.
They don't face so much, because imagine if there is a child who's sick at home, or there is a visitor at home, it would be normal to think that the men step outside, do their work, and come back. And if they are stepping outside, it will be hardly noticed.
So, Sowdhamini, actually a lot of women in science do report the fact that their career development or growth does take a back seat. Because, for example, they cannot join what is called the boys' club, but basically after work, dinners or drinks or meetings which are scheduled in those times, and women have to rush back for their responsibilities. So very often they tend to miss out on a lot of this kind of social networking that is required in becoming successful. No?
In my case, I have, so far as I have observed, I think women take their own decisions to not stay back. And
of course,
they want to be back at home, so they take their own decisions. And I also feel that what happens after those hours is pure social
where a lot of decisions
discussion go. And
so I also wanted to ask you that apart from low representation of women in science, one of the things that we look at as feminists is to look at what we call the gendering of the disciplines themselves. For instance, in the social science and economics, because it deals with material things, it's quantitative, it deals with rational choice, it deals with wealth making, production, all of that. It is seen as a much more masculine discipline, and you do tend to find more men there. And sociology, my own discipline, is seen as a far more feminized discipline, because we deal with people, relationalities, sociality and all of that. So this is constructed as a soft discipline. In natural sciences also you see something similar happening. Physics is seen as paradigmatic and something that you need to sort of emulate, and is seen as more abstract, more formal, more exact. Whereas biology is seen to be dealing with a lot more of, close to nature, organic things, and there is a certain kind of an understanding that because women are involved with taking, birthing, child rearing, whatever, women are more suited to biology. So this feminization of biology, how do you look at it?
I think it is true. It is true, and it's highly observed even today. I can remember that when I was doing my postdoctoral tenure in UK, in Cambridge. It's a big lab, and we had several floors, and the same lab could do some physics, could do some computing, mathematics, and also wet lab biology. And then I was stunned to note that the wet lab biology had maximum number of women.
I see. Yes.
Like if there are 15 people in the wet lab, 13 of them were women. And this sort of, on the other hand, when it comes to computing, it was mixed. If there were 20 people in the computing area, like maybe 10 of them are women and 10 are men. There is no particular distinction.
So how do we break this mindset, which basically feminizes some disciplines because they are softer, more subjective, and masculinizes, in our language, in the feminist language, disciplines which are more exact and which can predict better, faster.
Yeah.
How do you think we can break this kind of dichotomy?
Yeah, I think the PIs have a lot of role to play.
Okay.
I feel the principal investigators, if they are being able to display and think that think equal about men and women, and it is reflected in every way.
Right.
You know, the way they decide and the way they treat people, giving them a chance to present their work in every way, or to attend conferences. They will automatically start to filter into the immediate society, namely the lab.
Yes, but maybe you also need to work on this idea that it is not necessarily that women will be closer to disciplines which are softer and subjective.
Yes.
They can be very capable of doing very hard science, and vice versa.
Yeah.
And men can be very good at doing things which are so-called soft. This mindset also needs to change.
Absolutely.
No?
Yeah, I think the mindset matters, the personality matters, and also the individual's liking also matter. Because there are actually women who are good in physics, who are good in coding, who are good in computing.
Yes.
So I think such people, once the moment their liking and their passion start to overpower the how people think of them, I think not automatically things will change.
Yes.
Because even for me, I have been a chemistry person.
Okay.
And then I moved to computing since my master's.
Yes.
And I've stayed in computing.
Yeah.
So that means I have written quite a few algorithms. So it's not uncommon that someone even close to me and who is my well-wisher would make a remark, oh, this algorithm, it can't have been from you. You may not have written it.
Yeah.
You know, that's a sort of unconscious attitude.
How do you feel when that would happen?
I make sure that I don't react to it.
And you would ignore it?
Ignore it, because I neither confront it nor kind of accept it.
Maybe we should challenge it actually. No?
Yeah, because the more we ignore, I think the more it becomes easier for them and us.
Exactly.
Because they are regretting why they said, because they are seeing me do well.
Yes,
and then they will feel, oh, I should not have said it. So, and then I know that this is not going to stop me from doing what I want.
That is true. That is true. And we also get very, we get very afraid to sort of just become reactive, because that takes away a lot of our energy. No? It takes away a lot of our energy.
I think for many of us women who are in computing or physics or so, because we chose to be there, and it's not easy. I agree.
Sure.
But once we are there, I think passion takes over. Yeah, because people around, what they think, even if they remark something without their knowledge, it hardly start to matter, because our interest keeps us going.
It's just that we need to work with that hurt a lot more, which men have the privilege not to work with. So we have to cross that hurdle quite and it's once again very tiring.
Absolutely. I think my saving grace is really having interest. Because then we don't give ourselves the time to sit down and worry about what other people
just
think and
keep
doing.
So now let me take you back a little bit into a reflective mode. What was your childhood as a girl child? Specifically, do you see, for example, I was raised in a family where I was much loved, much equal opportunity was all there, and yet when I reflect upon it, there were subtle ways in which gender was reinforced, and I didn't catch it then, though I rebelled sometimes, saying, why should I be doing this, why my brothers aren't doing it. Over a period of time, I started realizing that these are structural issues. Even if personally I might have not been directly discriminated against, there were subtle ways in which I was gendered. How do you reflect on your early childhood as a girl child?
My family, my father's side were a family of doctors.
Okay.
And my mom's side, they were like scholars. Either good in Sanskrit.
Where did you grow up, Sowdhamini? Where was
in Chennai. In those days, it was very strictly viewed as a suburb of Chennai.
Okay.
So, being brought up in such a family of scholars and doctors, I think for us, education was very primary.
Correct.
So it acquired a very high importance. And even though we were like 3 girls and 1 boy in our nuclear family, we were, I can say that, treated the same way when it came to opportunities. And of course, my first sister kind of held herself back a little bit when it came to higher education. I would think that the younger ones need
should
that.
Be going there.
And I was lucky that I was the youngest. But other than that, I think we also had parents who had very good vision. So they gave us a lot of chance to go in out of the way. For instance, we were the first family to go from that suburb into the city and study. And then we learnt Hindi outside the school.
I remember you telling me.
So for us, we have always been quietly imbibed the culture that when you want to learn something, that's what is important. And we were all given equal chance.
But I often also think that it's such a privilege, to be able to pursue learning. There are, women from different castes, women from different families who actually don't get that opportunity, who are deeply restricted. So actually, I do think that this is quite a privilege for some of us to be able to pursue it, no?
Yeah, that is very true. And in terms of, even when we get the national fellows, when we become fellows, we know we have an responsibility to spread not only science, but to reach out to rural areas and then talk to women and girls, so that, if they get educated, and then the whole family benefits. So that's the feeling. So as a family, we support women education in our own small way. And I also like to go over to rural places and talk about science. And in the lab, we support both gender of students, but many of them happen to be women and mothers.
Well, NCBS seems to be having a lot of them, no? So let me proceed to ask you about, say, school, colleges. You were at IIT. And at IIC then, and then you went to Cambridge. And so now all these, particularly the IITs and IICs, are certain what we would call bastions of a certain presence of an upper caste group of people, right? And the women who make entry into this are often privileged by caste. But let's ask ourselves that in the curriculum, say in school or in IITs, or, do we see a reflection of a gender bias? I mean, suppose if I were to start with schools, very often that the experience of children is very different in a science classroom. There is an implicit, there's sometimes a teacher bias, there's sometimes syllabus is constructed in such a way that, even visually, there's been a lot of work analyzing visuality in the textbooks, for example. Girls are often shown doing secondary roles, boys are shown doing, more significant roles in the laboratory. This is changing, for sure. But what is your thought on this in terms of the education system in science particularly?
Right. So until higher secondary, I was in a girls' school. But it was a girls' school which had imbibed high moral values and taught us to be independent and strong. And when past higher secondary, I was in a co-education. Again, I must have been pretty lucky, because we were always viewed as whether we are good students or other students who need help. That sort of distinction was there. And amongst the good, it will be like one boy, one girl. So usually I'll be sent out with a boy to go for debates or stuff like that.
And did you enjoy it?
I enjoyed it very much.
It's so empowering. That's what I wish all women could have.
So when I look back, in retrospect, I think I've been very lucky to be in such an environment, because they treated us definitely equally.
But what was the IIT experience like? Because what I heard from women who were there, it is a very male space.
Space. But the department where I was studying is chemistry. And those days we did not have a biology department in IIT, and a biotechnology, it was just coming up, like maybe two faculty, but they were all within chemistry. But I can only speak of our department, because I suppose in computer science or physics, the situation may be different. But in chemistry, we had equal number of girls and boys. And except for the fact that we were chose to sit separate in different rows.
That happened, no?
Yeah.
So this was what, 90s?
90s. Yeah, sorry, this is mid-80s.
Mid-80s. So as late as that, we were separate places for boys and girls in IIT.
That classroom, there was some distinction, I should say. But when it came to practicals, it was mixed. And then therefore, when it came to library books, we had to timeshare. And we managed very well. And I can remember by the time we were graduating, we were thick friends. And whether we were girls or boys, we kind of walked around together. And
that is why Professor Balram properly says that girls and boys met and married the same.
Oh yeah, I was about to say there were a few couples as well who formed. But although we were not one of those, we were friends.
Yes.
Nice, healthy friendship was going on. And,
not that being boyfriend, girlfriend is unhealthy.
Not that it is unhealthy.
Friends,
but I mean to say that we would just go as a class, and stick together. And there, I think the gender difference did not come into picture, because our concerns were all kept on how to do well. Because there were a whole lot of things in IIT which was practiced different from the other colleges. For instance, it was not textbook driven, very thought driven. So our mind was completely into doing well and what we will do after that, helping each other. So luckily, I think the gender difference did not come up.
And was there a sort of a difference between, say, looking up to pure science and looking down on applied science? Did that sort of thing exist?
Yeah, the engineering in IIT is not mentioned, but it's way superior. Superior than people who engage in research or life sciences, the basic sciences. That distinction would be there.
So let me now take you to another. Now, you've been a professional scientist now for how many years?
25.
25 at
25
least,
years,
25. And you have your own lab and everything like that. So one of the things that we keep hearing as feminists from people younger people, or even the refrain that you hear often when you're talking about gender in science and the culture in science, often the refrain that we get is, but women are not doing anything any differently. They become very toxic. There are young people who say we would rather be in a lab which is not run by a woman, because women become more toxic. Even then the men, they become harder. They become, taskmasters. And my answer has always been, and the blame is always put on the woman. And that, look at this. Whereas when a man is doing it, it is taken to be as the normal thing. Okay, this is the culture. Now, my explanation always has been that women become like that because they have to fit in. There is a structural expectation. They have to fit in, so they have to play the game harder. So they become the way the profession wants them to become. What do you feel about this?
I have read somewhere that when you're working as a woman, whichever discipline is it may be you just learn to behave like a woman but think like a man.
Yes.
So that's the common advice that is given. But
I wish we would think like women.
I know. I mean, I have not particularly followed it. But what I think really has worked for me is because of my stay doing my postdoctoral tenure in the UK. That has played a big role in shaping in my communication. Because there, in the UK, people were very naturally very suggestive. Very suggestive, particularly when it comes to work and interactions. Between a PI and a student, or a PI and a postdoc. Because rarely they will tell, I think you should do this, or you must give this to me before so and so date. Those sort of instructive tone was never there. And I have naturally imbibed that quality, and even now when I talk to my students, I say, you may do this, you might want to look at this, and when do you think you will be able to give me this back? Because I post that back on them, because it becomes a pleasure for them to set themselves a deadline.
But where does this aggressive, demanding, almost inhuman practices come from? Is it competition that makes people do these things, or is it something else?
Yeah, I think there may be some inherent problems that they face.
Okay.
Might be shown up. And then the stress that they are going through, and their intention to prove to the world that they are also equally good, all these might come in the way. But if you don't cultivate these negative qualities, and if you're continuously performing, may not be high, stellar, but if you're performing well, above average, you can cultivate a positive mindset. So you're not extra stressed about anything. Yeah.
What a lovely thing to say.
I don't know. For me, I think the both mattered. My being very suggestive, and the fact that I had nothing, no negative thoughts really. Because if some anger is a pent up anger, we may show it on more vulnerable people. So that was not happening. So I think it went on well. Someone asked me how I managed to have 40 or more PhD students pass out.
Oh, you have 40 PhD
students also pass out.
Amazing.
So someone told I should talk about it, write about it. And I think each one is different. And one of my postdoctoral mentor had told that every student has a problem. There's never been a PhD student who has gone passed out without a problem. And our role is really to understand their potentials, their limitations, and their personality, because we want to get the best out of people without changing their personality totally. So as a result, I think that helped, to be open-minded about how to talk to them, what to expect from people, give proper projects. And I must say that every time a student passes out, they get a PhD. They might learn something from the lab, but we also learn something from them.
Of course, the reverse side of this, Sowdhamini, is that we also tend to adopt models from our social stereotypical roles of mothering. We often tend to think that the best way to mentor is to mother. But there are a lot of women who resist against that idea, because mothering is not something that might come naturally to many women. My suggestion, I remember this conversation with you, is that to take away something which is probably characteristic of this mothering role, which is a role of care. And if we bring in much more caring cultures and not mothering cultures in a laboratory, in the institution, wherever it is, maybe we'll move towards less toxic ways.
I think acting like a mother is not something I adopt. I definitely have a much more professional outlook in dealing with students, because student life and the lab is different from how we are at home. But of course, if there are difficult times, and if I expect something from a student and he or she is not coming up to that level of expectation, I ask myself. I do take a second to ask myself, would I like this if something happens to my own child? And how I would like my child to be treated. So that gives that extra,
it gives that little bit of
care,
insight.
And being little more thoughtful and putting ourselves in the
You have
shoes.
a daughter, right?
My daughter.
So I will now try to ask you something which seems like a frivolous question, but it isn't. So I've been watching, and we've all been talking about this idea of presentation of self. There's a certain way in which women in science, women in academics in general, but women in science are expected to dress, expected to perform. On the one hand, you're supposed to tone down your femininity, feminine ways of dressing. You're supposed to be more, sedate and serious. Some women, young women, have also said that if they dress in a very happy way, a flashy way, whatever it is, they don't get taken seriously.
I see.
What do you
feel? I have actually heard some comments from my PhD students say about their teachers. When they were doing masters, it's like in a big college, big classroom. They have told how their teachers, lady teachers, were dressed heavily. And I could understand how they feel, but I think the teachers also need that class attention, right? Because they need to be dressed in respectfully enough so that they can gain the attention of the class. That's not easy. However, in research, I feel, first of all, not very keen on dressing up well.
See how we internalize this, all of us, no?
I think probably it's conditioned, or even I've been simple throughout. So for me, I didn't miss out anything. But I feel for me, what is more important is how we carry forward ourselves, in different situations and unusual situations or difficult situations, whether we are able to conduct ourselves gracefully.
So sorry to interrupt, but for instance, a lot of women in academics, even in science, report that in, say, a meeting or in a discussion, they have to raise their voice, ask for space more. They have to say something twice before they are heard. Then before they start sort of speaking louder. And in the process, they are also seen as being then pushy or, not being accommodative. And so that's another thing that a lot of women go through. Do you?
Yeah, I think it's some of it is quite unconscious. Unconsciously brought in, and most of the such situations, women learn how to conduct themselves. It is partly their personality, plus they know the timing, when to speak. That is very important.
Do men go through this?
Men go through this also equally. I think equal. Maybe again, I have been very lucky to be in a good environment, because I have not faced myself being pushed behind or when we are in a meeting or something. And I think it comes with experience, because we have to tell our points clearly but not too forcefully, and also wait for our turn. I think if we
but this should be something applicable to everyone. No?
Everyone, that is. Women. And I have not seen that happen so much. Not pushed behind or something. That's not a problem. I have faced so much.
You have not faced it. No, of course. There's another rather sensitive issue, which is the issue of sexual harassment. Now, we might not have faced it, as I've been hearing a lot, but does it exist in the scientific institutions, in scientific communities?
It is very unfortunate but true. But what is even more sad is that the vulnerable people don't realize it. They are not conscious there is something going on. I mean to say this only after I became the chair of the grievance committee. The kind of reports I get, sometimes people go through without, it requires a lot of courage to come up and tell this.
Of course.
But I feel that it happens, it may as well happen because of the slight hierarchy that exists in a lab. So there is a PI, and then there are postdocs, and then there are PhD students, and then there are trainees. And I can imagine that if a trainee comes, he or she is so young,
vulnerable,
and unknown to the area, so they are always dependent on the immediate student or whoever they are reporting to. So I could imagine that such people, and especially the middle level people who themselves don't know how to handle so much power, can very well say, unless and until you favor me in some way, I'm not going to help you with this experiment.
See. So
and this actually sadly happens both for boys and girls. Little more for the girls.
I agree that it's a question more of power.
I mean that about the physical harassment that might happen. The other is the mental harassment. May be a big word, but the mental hierarchy. If I have a girl trainee having to report to a PhD student, the PhD student is going to make the person feel small. And there are many cases where they enjoy teaching, and the trainee goes back with a very happy mind. But I can again imagine that they are always kept behind. Even when it comes to reporting work, they occupy the main space, and then this person comes and says a subsidiary result. So they don't get the space to say what they want, and they may not have the freedom.
Quite hierarchical, no? In that sense, which naturally brings in power equations.
I can imagine this, and I'm very conscious that such things should not happen in our lab.
That's where the hope is, if individuals can do it differently. So now I'm going to ask you some rather wide questions, and those are questions about what do you think modern science began with the idea of progress, enlightenment, all of that. And yet it's contributed to such immense risks to human society, whether it's through the production of the atom bomb, through the kind of climate change that we are seeing. What do you think? What has gone wrong?
Right.
Why do you... So the power that you're talking about that exists in a laboratory, we are suggesting that it's this idea of power, overpowering nature, control, and using it for the benefit of mankind, but it's hardly been used for that. We just showed us the two faces of science. No?
Yeah.
How would you respond to that? Where should we go? How should we look at it?
Yeah, I think getting deeper in science means we are also handling a lot of responsibility. Yeah, with science comes a lot of invention, discovery, probing, changing, tinkering a little bit, even bioengineering, all those is a form of tinkering nature. But inherently we hold a lot of responsibility. And I will never forget what I read when I was a postdoctoral fellow, and in the neighboring seat, it was written, give me the courage not to use my power.
Yes.
That is very, very important. I think, we have the power to do experiments or to change things with nature. I think we better ask ourselves whether it is worthwhile.
Exactly.
Is it doing better to the community? Is it doing good for the society?
Right.
For instance, we also have done some genome sequencing of herbal plants.
Yes, the tulsi plant.
Yeah, the
Tell
tulsi.
us more about that.
Yeah, it all started because I myself benefited with all these use of medicinal plants, and I wanted to give back to the society. And I myself, as a teenager, have asked, why should I have this? What does it do to my system?
Yes.
So those whys, hows, our older generations were not used to asking, nor did they know the answer.
Okay.
They are highly educated, but still they would not know these answers. So I thought, let me use this current techniques and opportunities to do a genome sequencing and then of the tulsi to begin with, and then measure or objectively measure the number of small molecules, the secondary metabolites that this plant holds, so that we can show in a convincing way, scientifically, scientific evidence being there, that because of these reasons, because of these chemicals and the way the tulsi uniquely behaves, it confers so many curative and preventive properties and helps the humankind from illnesses. So in that
and women in indigenous communities were the ones who dealt with herbs.
Yeah, so it was called as what is it called? Grandma's recipe.
Yes.
It was not called as grandfather's recipe.
Yeah, I wish it would just be called herbal medicine.
Yeah. Like you said, because they not only looked after the kitchen, but they also dealt with so many crises in the house.
Absolutely.
If a child falls sick, they don't rush them to the hospital, but they know how to deal with that at home. Usually these were medicinal
and these
plants.
are knowledges. These are knowledge epistemics.
Knowledge being passed. So in a way, I have tinkered with nature. I have gone and purified the DNA RNA of the medicinal plant, but it's all with a good reason.
Okay.
So therefore, I think if we can do some scientific experiments, if it helps the society, and use the power with responsibility, and we do not engage in harmful research, it might give us lot more satisfaction that we have modified the route, but is it in intervening the natural way of behavior of animals and species around us, and are we doing anything better to not only human beings but to all the species whom we coexist with?
So I mean, I'm also reminded by one very important story that you had told me about the two-body problem. That you and your husband were in this, were more or less in the same field.
I mean, this is a very profound statement that my PhD guide, Professor Balram, said when we were making our first visit after getting our PhD certificate. He saw me and my husband, who are both in the same area, and told, "You're both not having a two-body problem. You're having a four-body problem." because of the fact that we are roughly of the same age, wanting to become independent at the same time, and we are in the same area, and of course we want to be in the same city. So he said it's going to be much more difficult.
Of course.
And that is very true.
Even today, it's extremely
true. Because either one of the two decide to step back and try after some time.
Most of the time it's the women, no? The women go into teaching in the same city, the men go into research, most of the time. Very rarely do you see the reverse happening.
And the good thing is the opportunities have expanded, the career opportunities. And of course, still one of them, mostly the women, take the bold choice to go and do something different after their postdoc. And they might go into company or teaching or maybe come up with their own startup company. The options have become more. And then there is also research management, writing.
But that feeling of not having got into a research institute will linger, no? Linger. It sort of makes for some
Absolutely. I think this two-body problem has been very thoughtfully addressed only by few research institutions. And I'm happy to say that here in NCBS for quite some time, we were having almost equal women, women PIs. For the past few years,
now
it has
have
declined.
10 out of 30, I think 31, something like that.
We are very conscious of it and we are trying to.
So, one last question, that if you are given complete freedom of, free of all responsibilities, of, external responsibilities that they are called and things like that, and you had all the time in the world to pursue your science, would that be something ideal? Would you want that?
This is something that most women scientists dream of.
They dream of, no?
We just create some sectors in our time when we get such an opportunity. It could be, it's mostly, for me at least, it was a sector of time that I create for myself post-dinner. Post-dinner. Because then I don't hold any guilt. I looked after all the things at home. I will start with my daughter to look at her, help her with the homework or project or something. And then I take my work. And unfortunately, this is not the best thing to do because it takes a toll on our health.
Yes.
And this was the time when I was being so ambitious. I could get more grants, more publications, and catch up with my work. But this is not the ideal way to go. But on the other hand, at a work time, I hope I have played a small role in creating that me space for women scientists by creating a creche in the campus.
Because
I was also instrumental. In fact, the idea came from my side and many people contributed in the development of a creche. And that means I hope that people get that window of opportunity to focus on their work, to have that, peace of mind. Because the children are here, right in campus. And someone is looking after them and they are safe. And if anything is there, they can just go back and take them back home or something. I think that makes a big difference. Because within the work time of 9 to 5 or something, we are still able to achieve.
No, I'm so glad that you're dedicated to these activities. Unfortunately, most of the time, I feel it also adds to us as women, professional women. All these responsibilities also become our burden. Things are changing, definitely. But on the other hand, it becomes our burden to take care of the women workforce, to take care of setting up creches, to take care of setting up ICs, and where is the time? So little time left to then do our own work. But so I'm very glad, Sowdhamini. Is there anything that you want to add? Would you like to say something?
Just about role models, maybe.
So you spoke about role models. Yes, I remember.
I feel that the formative years. For any student, I think it's nice to have a role model. In my case, I had a family whom we were friends with, and one of them happened to be a professor. And at that time, she had registered for PhD in mathematics, and later she became a professor in IIT Madras, in fact.
I see.
And then the second girl in that family was a medicine doctor.
Achha.
So I told myself I want to be like her or like her. So this really helped me to think higher.
Yes.
Of course, in the formative years it helps.
Yeah.
However, as we go higher and especially we become an independent investigator, this strangely I feel does not work because each person is so different. Your environment and your work challenges and home responsibilities may be different from what another person has.
Yes, so this role model
idea just crumbles. So we work out of necessity.
Yeah. I'm glad you said this because I have a problem with this role model idea also, especially because the state, the community, all wants us to work towards make role models for girls to enter into science. But these role models literature is often very unrealistic, The actual experience of women in science is much more of a challenge, and there are struggles and there are struggles that you have to face as girls and as women. I think we should prepare them for it, rather than make these very neat role models. There is no discrimination, it's all about merit, there's no power play, there is no sexual harassment. If we do this and we say only science and only the pursuits, I think we give a wrong picture to young people. Let them come into it knowing very well what they are up for.
True. Yeah, they have to form their life finally. Because exactly following a role model has its negatives also. Because when they take a decision, they should not feel either guilty or taken, I'm left behind. Because whatever they want to structure their life, they can be happy with it.
Absolutely. Because that's eventually the goal. Thank you, Sowdhamini. Thank you so
lovely.
much.
It was lovely talking to you.
It was, and I'm so glad that we kept gender at the focus. Thank you, Sowdhamini.